everyone, and we're live. You're tuning to Cosmic Children. I'm your host, Kevin, and today I have a fascinating individual in the studio with me. So I was introduced to this individual by the company that she runs, and I thought that you were doing a very, very noble thing with the products that you put out and the people that you've collaborated with this company, and it is truly a very interesting story. So, Elisa, could you please introduce yourself and tell the audience what is this company that you run and what do you do?
Yeah. Hi, so I'm Elisa, and so at Well, we design apparels. We started off designing apparels with the forethought of the marginalized, right? And that's your persons with disabilities, your caregivers, and your elderlies. And that was the start, because I mean, my training is in fashion design, right? So very naturally, how this all started was using apparels as a medium, fashion and textile as a medium. But after doing this a little bit more, we realized that, there are very similar problem statements that can be addressed using other mediums as well. And so just one case is this, right? We first thought to design maybe a collection for caregivers, right? And as we were going on, we realized that even if we were to design the best solutions out there for caregivers, if fundamentally caregivers and their care receivers do not have a relationship, a healthy one, if there isn't a way they communicate that could, support one another, then even if you were to give the best solution out there, it's not going to solve anything at all, right? And so we thought, okay, so now let's take a step back then. What can we do as designers? I guess we thought, maybe we could design a card game. And it's essentially a conversational card game where, we thought that if these difficult conversations could be brought across in a lighthearted manner, maybe this could be a start of, a relationship where support is given mutually, right? So we thought, we would, like designing card games. We do have the kind of skill set to get around making that happen, and so we designed something called Give Me a Hand.
Yep.
And that's one of the other things that we have started designing also that sort of expands beyond fashion textile.
Yep.
Yeah, we started designing workshops as well, because we think that came from the thought that, if there were more people with the skill sets that we have, and if we could impart the way we think and approach design, maybe they could help themselves, right?
Interesting.
And this would multiply the impact. Yeah, so we thought, okay, let's design a workshop called So Simple.
Yep.
And then we started teaching. So that entire workshop consists of the technical aspect that we teach and also the design thinking approach that we teach. And ever since then, we do have all sorts of people that come and learn from us, which is rather interesting as well.
Could you take me back to the inception of the company and even the brand? Have you always had this idea in mind to do adaptive clothing for people from marginalized groups, or did the idea grow with you, grow on you, or did you encounter something that kind of changed the trajectory a little bit? Yeah,
so I guess something a little bit more different from myself and my peers is that when I decided to do fashion design, it wasn't because of the fashion industry that I knew of first. I first learned of the craft. So that's sewing and pattern making. And that's when I realized that, hey, what comes after making a blouse, a skirt, and a dress, right? And then I was just thinking, okay, it must be more, but I had no clue. And then I went to the library to start reading up a little bit more about fashion, and I realized that, oh, it's an industry in its own, right? It's not just sewing and pattern making.
That's just one small part of it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I had spent a lot of time reading magazines in the library because it would cost too much to purchase magazines. And then in these books, they give you references to blogs. And back then, it's all about the fashion blogging and all that as well. So this is kind of how I got exposed to the industry. And I thought, okay, now this sounds rather interesting. Not very common. But worthwhile giving it a go because the craft is interesting, right? And I thought right after O levels, I was gonna pursue that because I am done with general studies. So done.
Yeah, as most people find out after O levels.
Yeah, no, it's so painful. It was so painful.
Yep.
I feel like my most painful time in my life was like primary school and secondary school.
Okay.
Just because I have no clue. And then I decided that I was gonna pursue fashion design in school. And that was also when I got to learn more about the industry furthermore, right? And I was just trying to find a fit. Cause as designers, as artists, you're always trying to find something for yourself, like a language, tone, right? A style that represents you. But what really got me thinking is that, you see, I am this Singaporean girl that has gone through the most difficult childhood growing up. And I don't have a story like Alexander McQueen that had went through all that kind of trauma growing up, Yep. And I mean, I grew up in such a warm and loving family.
It's pretty cozy. Yeah.
It is. And I'm like, all right, I don't think I have a story to tell here. My story is pretty much the same as yours or someone else in that sense, right? I'm just like really trying to dig something out of myself to tell, but it just got really tiring. Because I'm like, if this is me, right? Yep. And I felt really limited, and I felt like, I don't know what I have to offer. And then in my third year of my diploma was when a doctor had approached me to make clothes for his patients.
A doctor?
Yeah, a doctor. Okay. Honestly.
Was it someone you knew before? Or?
No, it was like an acquaintance cousin.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like the only way I can honestly make sense of the whole event is to just really say the thing that it's a divine appointment.
It's quite serendipitous.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. Just because really, if you think about it logically, I am just finishing up my diploma. There are other designers out there that are more established, they can do a good job. He wasn't trying to undercut or he paid me decently for that job.
What did he want from you?
He wanted outfits for his patients. Yeah. And something that is, easy, comfortable for his patients to put on.
Yep.
Yeah. And when I first came across that, I was just thinking that, I never thought that my craft in fashion and textiles could do that. Could meet a need.
Yep.
Yeah, because if you think about the fashion industry, it can get a little frivolous, it belongs to the luxury market. It belongs to a very different group of people.
Definitely.
Right? The ones who can afford it. Yeah, and I didn't grow up in this space, so I knew nothing of that. But when he brought that case up, it clicked very instantly for me because I think so. If I didn't grow up with luxury and I didn't grow up in all that fancy things and I didn't know of fashion, then I got to know something else, right? And I think that's a lot about them, about what my parents did they spend a lot of time with their community, and that's what I knew of.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And when he brought that up, it sort of just made sense to me that, hey, maybe my craft could be used to meet a community's need. And that's kind of how it all started. Yeah.
Before we move forward with that, I'm just curious to know what attracted you to fashion or the craft of fashion. What attracted you to it?
I think I like the sewing part. It's really like craft as it is, right?
Yeah.
Getting your hands on at it. And then the pattern making part sort of just made sense to me. I mean, I think that I like math. I don't know whether I can do it very well, but you see, it's kind of like an in-between. There are numbers you got to make sense of, proportions and all that kind of stuff. Simple calculations, I would think, enough to make sense of the pattern.
Yep. So pattern making is like math.
Yeah,
a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. And it's not like drawing, because like drawing, you sometimes just need a little bit more of that, like, you do have quite a lot of liberty, right? But pattern making has kind of like, there are rules to that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because it's the body proportion you're playing with.
Yep.
So there are boundaries that you need to follow by. And that makes it less intimidating for me when you think about drawing or when you think about craft and art.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
Interesting, because if we were to touch on pattern making, you mentioned that there are certain templates to go by, but everyone's body is different.
Yeah.
Were you cognizant of the fact when you were going in and learning these crafts, like maybe some people do not fit those particular body types and stuff like that?
Honestly, when I had started, nothing of that came to mind before, just because I'm really fortunate that the patterns that I've been drawing ever since school days, they fit me very well. So I never had to think about how I can fit into a garment in that sense. Right? Yeah. And I guess it's only as I move on and learn more about the craft and the industry that then I started getting a little bit more exposed to the possibilities of different body shapes and sizes, different body forms, right? And so I started my research trying to understand the seated posture versus the standing posture.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why these two distinct postures?
So after I had attended to the doctor's patients, I thought about which other groups of people can I, try and understand their needs a little bit more. And I thought, and he had a contact for me to people with muscular dystrophy. And so a lot of them use the wheelchair. And so it's the seated body.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's kind of how it all started. It went on from,
When you got introduced to that contact and the people with muscular dystrophy, how did you approach that? How was the process? How did the process look like for that? Yeah. Because it is it feels like a different problem to solve. Yeah. So how did you approach that?
It's very interesting, honestly. That's the social space. Right? We come from the arts industry, the fashion industry, and then crossing into a social space was very interesting for me because it allowed me to look at, what are ways I can go about navigating, what are responses that these people in the space typically have, like what are the things that they respond to. And I gotta say, it's such I love that space a lot. That space is they are the ones who first accepted me, accepted the idea. Yeah, because they understood the needs.
Could you expound on that a little bit? What do you mean by that? Yeah.
So the needs are really like, as a wheelchair user, they understand that dressing gets very challenging for caregivers. And all these are existing problem statements that they always had but had no solutions to. So when I came along, it clicked for them, right? It made sense. It didn't take me more to have to convince them that it's a problem, right?
Okay.
Whereas for other industries, in fact, even the design industry itself, I had to point out to them that, hey, there are needs like that, right? But in the social space, it's straight up. It's like speaking to occupational therapists. They understand this straight up because like they deal with patients with all these kind of challenges all the time, but they just haven't got a solution around. So it's easy to get around that. And the process was first trying to understand what are these challenges that they have, right? And how is it that I as a designer can try and understand it even though I am not a user myself. So very intuitively, all this process, I mean, if you don't know something, you just got to look into it. And how do you look into it? You observe, you do interviews, you do different things.
Yep.
We once even designed a toolkit to try and understand if emotions and colors, how do they correlate? How do they affect the mood of a person? And if whether we could come up with something universal enough, right? Yeah, and we design a toolkit where, you know, and even relating it with textile to touch.
Yep.
Yeah, so we designed a box. We put in different kind of fabrics in there, and we asked people to touch and relate it with an emotion.
Yep.
Likewise with colors and stuff. So we did all sorts of stuff to try and understand a problem. Yeah.
So I guess first and foremost, how it might differ from the traditional fashion making process is about to understand the challenges and the need that both the caregivers and the care receivers might face.
Yeah, pretty much. And that was when we realized that, hey, you know, it's far beyond just caregivers and care receivers, right? Each of us do have very different style preferences, ways of that we like putting on a shirt or etc. Right? Yeah, and how would that look like? How could that look like for the wider group of people? Yeah.
So when I was researching for this particular episode and looking through the website and the social collaterals and stuff like that, I think a word that stood out to me was dignified.
Yeah.
It stood out to me because I don't see that word commonly used in association with clothing or wearables and stuff like that. So I'm just curious to know, why is the word dignified? What does the word mean to you? And why is it used to describe the type of clothing that you do?
So I think I think it's all the more prominent, right? Especially with people with disabilities, just because functionally, physically, they are limited in some ways or another, which then oops. Okay, I will continue. And I was just, about dignified, right? Where
do you want to collect yourself?
My thoughts. Okay, yes, I got it. I got it back. I found it. Thank God. It didn't fly too far away. But yes, about dignified and how persons with disabilities, especially, you know, when it comes to physical disabilities, it's all the more prominent, right? Just because you're dependent on someone else to do things for you, and because of that limitation, then sometimes it does get sometimes you just don't get it the way best for you, right? I mean, as I'm speaking about this, I have like images in my head about how this could look like. I mean, yeah, if you were to visualize like somebody who is dependent on caregiver's help, but the caregiver is really stressed out by the entire situation, just really tired already. And so imagine you're so tired already. Would you still ask? Would you still take the effort to ask someone, what color would you like to wear today? You see, so these things are emotionally important, but like physically and functionally, no, right? But that also means dignity for someone else to even be able to decide for themselves independently, saying, this is what I like to wear today. This is how I would like to dress, express myself today. And yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone's at fault over here, really. But I think that there can be a lot of education and nurture that goes around this space, such that you see caregivers and care receivers are able to understand how they can support one another in a dignified manner. So let's say even this is very applicable in the role of a caregiver as well. You see, how is it that we can create dressing processes such that caregivers feel dignified helping someone else?
So it's a two-way street, right?
It's two ways.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, so these are more of the obvious ways of seeing it. If we were to ask that question for ourselves, right? What are some things that we go around doing that we have forgotten about with regard to dignity? Right? I mean, I'm just gonna leave it here.
Do you mean the things that we overlook?
Yeah. What are some details that we might have overlooked just because we live in a pace where the speed is?
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It is. It's ridiculous. It's funny how we say it's ridiculous and we just don't have a way around it. Yeah. I mean, like I always said, like when people say, oh, you must be busy, I'm like, come on, right? I think that even an unemployed person in Singapore is busy.
Yeah. That's just the natural state of things.
My grandma is busy too. I have no idea what she does, but she's busy.
Yep.
Right?
So there's kind of like an underlying current of like a little bit of anxiety there that you kind of have to be doing something with your time. If not, you're kind of like falling behind or whatever social pressures it might be.
Yeah. I hope I didn't digress too far, but
no, not at all. We love digressions on this podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting train of thought. So to expand on how you write and you describe the clothing that you do, I'm just curious to know how do you think clothing affects us?
Yeah.
In the ways we can see and the ways we can't see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, why do people pay so much money to buy clothes that just clothes, you know? Why do people spend so much money? And I feel like a lot of that is...
It goes beyond function.
It's clearly beyond function. In fact, sometimes you pay so much money for that piece and it functionally doesn't even serve you.
True.
What in the world?
Yep.
And so that speaks a lot of what it means to a person, or what it can mean to a person far beyond textiles. Yeah, far beyond the physical element, right? Yeah, so it emotionally affects us. And I mean, if we were to just take a step back and think about ourselves when we look into our wardrobe on a Monday, right? Feeling all the blues.
Yeah.
Naturally, I don't know, for me, there was once I just started, like every Monday I picked out a black dress.
Okay. Consciously or unconsciously?
It's unconsciously.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just like I just need to be in a dress that makes me feel like I'm not going anywhere. Just makes me feel like I'm still in my pajamas, but I'm going to work. Yeah. All right.
Yep.
It's like, you know, the cho-cho that you bring around when you like kids bring that around.
It's an item of affection, right?
Yes, an item of affection, a symbol of something also. When I picked up that black dress, it was a symbol of comfort for me. Yeah. And for some strange reason, it's just Mondays that I like to pick that dress. That's it.
Okay.
And it serves me in that sense emotionally. It gives me that comfort, right? And physically, very clearly, why we have to wear clothes is because it protects our skin.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Right. As it is.
So when you were doing your research for Will and Well, was this a particular element that you kind of noticed that wasn't serving the needs of people with disabilities? Like, they are not being thought of in this way, that like the clothing should actually make them feel a particular emotion. They should have a choice in what they might want to wear and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%. Back in the days when I was just first doing my research, it was rather bizarre to think that people are producing clothes for the sake of producing clothes that are functional.
What do you mean by that?
That means that so when I was doing my research, there were a lot of these adaptive apparel solutions that has just no design thought in that piece, in these pieces, right? And it's fundamentally rude.
Okay.
It's rude to I mean, it's
what?
Okay,
why is it rude?
It's rude just because, like, a garment can do so much for a person, besides the physical aspect of it, right? And why was that not? Why is that not being cared for? Why is that not being attended to? I don't think it asks for much. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If you were just like, as a designer, I'm trying to empathize and see, am I being too harsh about it? But I mean, thankfully we have moved on from there, and now designs are starting to look things are getting competitive. Yeah, people are realizing that clothes are able to serve the emotional part as well, and hence style is important. For people to even have the option to consider different colors and styles, are more available these days. Yeah.
Because I would imagine if we just think about clothing and fashion, going beyond the idea of function, it's mostly about expression.
Yeah.
And it seems like we might have overlooked or not thought of giving them the tools of expression even. So right now you mentioned as there are brands coming up to serve those needs.
Yeah. And thankfully they are more common now than otherwise. Yeah. But I guess if we were to consider the timeline of things and the progression of things, I must say is that at least these people had thought about addressing the functional needs of these people. So I mean, thank you for starting that. Right?
That is at least progress.
Yeah, that's at least progress.
Progress in the right direction, really.
Yes, progress in the right direction. And then, I guess as we go along, we add in a little bit more. We grow a little bit further, push it a little bit further.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what I find to be fascinating about the products that you come up with are the customizations that you do and the features that you embed in the clothing, be it hidden or not hidden, to serve the different needs that the individuals that come to you might have. So I'm curious to know, how do you not over-design it?
Yeah.
Like, or overthink, or because there's so many problems to solve and so many needs to make. How do you dial down, like, these are the 3 core needs that my product should meet, and that's it? Yeah. It's
a constant seesaw.
Okay.
So I see it as a seesaw because, like, some things you have to give, some things you have to take. And it really depends on what is the primary need. So sometimes, I can be doing a customization consultation with a client, and then they'll be really ambitious. They'll say, I need this, and then we will come up with all these kind of solutions. And then it comes to a point where, like, this is just like, it'd be great to have every bit of it, but that means we are forsaking some other bits, right? We can put in all the pockets in the world, but imagine you're just probably going to look like a clown at the end of it, right? Now, what are we giving, right? What are we taking? What are we giving? I mean, if you think that these pockets are going to, like, you think you're going to rock in it and look great in it, I mean, by all means, right? Cool. We give you all the pockets, but we try and do that for our clients. We help them weigh it out as well. And when we're able to do that for them, and if we realize that this is something important for them, then we try and help them to reprioritize, right? So for this garment, what are the key elements you want, right? And let's say if you want to meet that other need, could it be on another garment?
Gotcha.
Right? So it's just like balancing it out in that sense, yeah.
So I guess it's more like a collaboration between the individuals and you and your team to sit down. And I imagine this process it will take quite some time.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it run in contrast to the idea of how, as we talked about before, the speed at which, let's say, the fashion industry is moving? I mean, people are more cognizant of fast fashion these days, but it's still present. It's a behemoth that isn't going to go away like tomorrow. So the things that you've just mentioned runs in total contrast, because these things would take time, it would take thought, and it's a process to figure out what functionalities I want in my garment, and that will take time to do it. Yeah,
100%. It is a collaborative effort. So during the consultation sessions, we try and keep it within an hour. We try. But honestly,
it doesn't sound very convincing.
The first meeting, we try and keep it to 1 hour. But then what you don't realize is that the following sessions are a little bit more tweaks, a little bit more consulting and all that. And we try and not look at all that. I mean, if you were to add all that up, it's not going to make sense at all, right? But after all, it's important. And, you know, having said about time, right? Well, even though we do not want to live in this state of speed, but the thing is, sometimes life serves you with a certain timeline only.
What do you mean by that?
So we have clients who are making their last piece of garment, and the doctors say we do not know when this person is going to pass. So you are racing with
their own internal timeline.
Internal time, yes. And like, even though our policy is, you know, we ask for 1 to 1.5 months to finish the entire process. But sometimes life isn't going to allow for that. And so then we try and prioritize. We will try and tell our other customers, and then we're going to ask for a little bit more time and shift things around because we have an emergency case here. So that is kind of how we manage that, and it's really quite interesting. And I think after all, we're really thankful that, you know, sometimes these garments, even though we thought that they're gonna go with the person very quickly already, in fact, people recover from their state. And then we have another problem. Now the garments, now this person has gotten so well, that person has put on more weight. This garment doesn't work anymore. Okay, now how can we redesign it? Like, how can we, you know, expand the original piece? So it's very dynamic.
It sounds very dynamic.
And that's exactly what makes this whole thing so fun. Like, there's just so much life in that whole process.
There's so much life in the That is a very interesting way of summarizing life, because what you just said about you meeting your clients and customers that might not have that long in this world, I would imagine being faced with that, both one as a business owner, two as a designer, and just three as a human being. It's a lot of things to juggle at once, and you still want to make it, but it's very different from a conventional piece of clothing, because you know that this could be the last thing that they wear. And I think that takes that extracts a heavy price on an individual when you consider the magnitude of that. Because going back to dignity, I think you would want the person to feel a certain way, comfortable, dignified when they wear the piece of clothing, and it could be the last. I think that is pretty intense.
It is, and there was, so I'm trying to recall now the time when I had met one of the client and the doctor said, this is a young girl, right? You might have read it in a blog post about Amelia.
The one with the lights?
Yes, 100%. She asked for lights on her dress. I'm just like, okay, girl, you want it, we'll make it happen. I have no clue yet, but we will make it happen.
How was she when you first met her?
So she is nonverbal. She is perpetually, she sleeps for more than about 20 hours on average in a day. So she's only awake sometimes in a day. And those are some very precious moments back then because she was so unwell, the doctor was just really uncertain of how long she has left. And when I went there, you know, I was feeling all sorts of emotions because like there's a lot of pressure, like you said. There was also like that fear of not being able to do what she wants and to deliver that. And to think of even what the doctor had said, right? But when we were in the process, that was when so much of life that happened, because this is us trying to co-design for a girl who's nonverbal but has a mind about how her dream dress is going to look like. She knows it exactly how she wants it, right? Between white lights and colorful lights, rainbow lights, she could say that she wanted white lights. Girl is classy.
Yeah.
She knows. Between pink, blue, you know, she knows exactly she wants pink. She likes both because they are favorite colors of her favorite princesses, right? But she thought about how this would match the other elements in the dress. Yeah. And how we communicated with her was we would put the fabric on her hands where she can feel it, and then she would blink.
Oh, interesting.
As a response. To yes. And man, when she doesn't blink, she doesn't blink.
You break a sweat.
Yeah, you know that's not getting through. No, it was so funny because it got to the day when I had delivered the dress, like when I was due to deliver the dress, I went over to her place. I was chatting with her mom and her sister outside, and she knew that I was coming, right? And she was in the room, and then she decided to give us all a scare by holding her breath. So what happens is when she holds her breath long enough, an alarm will go off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she held her breath.
And the alarm went off.
Yeah, went off. Just to get her out of the room to meet me. Yeah, she wanted to see her dress.
Okay. Oh dear.
Yeah, she went to the extent to get our attention. But yeah, it really, you know, just even thinking about that whole process, it was such a the whole process was full of excitement, full of even for herself, she was just excited about it. Yeah, and even though we knew that there's an outcome that could possibly happen, but the whole process was just full of life. Yeah.
That is amazing to hear, because it feels like every time a customer walks through the doors and speaks to you guys for like a custom piece, it's a different piece. Yeah. It's gonna be a different piece because they have different needs, different challenges, they want different things, they're at a different point in their life, regardless. Yeah. Is that exciting?
No, it's so dynamic, it's so exciting. It's worth doing it, really. Like, it's so worth it, even though sometimes, it doesn't make sense. Yep. Yeah.
I when I was reading the blog and reading through the stories and the profiles that you have put up there, it feels very humanizing. At least to me, looking and reading the stories. Was there any particular intent or view or vision you had when you started this business to avoid certain stigmas or misconceptions that people might have, but to put the people that you work with in this light?
Yeah. So the question is, if
was it always your intent to cast the models and people you have in this humanizing way? Because there are certain misconceptions and stigmas that people might have when they encounter people with disabilities and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, 100%. In fact, a lot of the work that we do is trying to educate people, to put them to show people what the reality actually looks like, and it's actually not too far away from us. It's not so unrelatable, not so hard to understand, right? Because when you read the stories, you can understand it.
Definitely.
And when you can understand it, then that's as much as I need you to know. Right?
Yep.
That these are common things. These are things behind the doors, right? And these are also people who would like to be acknowledged, like to be known, like to be given a voice.
It's interesting. I'm just curious to know, the word inclusivity has been thrown around these days and being used as marketing and for all sorts of campaigns and stuff like that. I'm curious to know, what does it mean to you, the word inclusivity?
Yeah.
What does it mean to you and I guess to a business to really embody that particular term?
Yeah. Honestly, I still find it very hard to make sense of the happenings around that word, right?
It's a very loaded word.
It is so loaded.
Yeah.
Like, you can make a statement about it and then like somebody is gonna like say something else about it, and then does it mean that does it mean that, it's not valid anymore? But I guess, we try and I always keep myself in check about that. But I still don't think I have like the 100% answer to that. But how we relate and how we make sense of that at will and well is, what we try to give a voice to and what we try to do is attend to details and needs that have not been given a platform or a voice or an opportunity, and we want to acknowledge them. We want to include them. We want to have them journey with us because we think that they are important. We think that their needs are important, and it really is as it is, right? Whether or not you are amputated, whether or not you are seated perpetually, or whether or not and anything really, and anyone, we do not say no to these things. We do not think that it's not important enough to attend to. It's a simple, I think it's as simple as it is, right? And I think what's more important is that we are able to do this consistently. So that means when we are small, when we have nothing, when we become a little bigger, we do have a little bit more. And when we become big potentially, we also do not forget this, right? And to continuously be that platform be the people to continue to represent the unheard. Yeah.
Interesting that you mentioned about when you guys get bigger. So I believe you started as a one-man operation. At least the article that I read told me.
Yes.
as most businesses do.
Yeah.
How was the process going from that to expanding and hiring people and I guess even choosing the right people for it?
Yeah.
Do you look for anything in particular? Because the job that you do and the customers that you face and the clients you have goes beyond or ask a lot more than just a regular skill set.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, right, just because, I for one thing, I'm really particular about the people who I bring along, just because it's really important to be aligned, in terms of the importance of things, right? I mean, we all have different priorities. We think certain things are more important than others, and that's fine, right? But if you want to be on this journey where we perceive this as fundamental values, then I need somebody who believes in this to run as well. And yeah, it is hard. Not just because it's hard, it's hard to find somebody who rides along, who understands it also. But let's be honest, right? It's a small business. We cannot afford, as people sometimes might wish to be paid. And there's no way to, I mean, I don't know how to convince you to stay.
Yep.
If your priority is to need to have a certain amount every month, right? And if you need to meet your needs in that way, then you could be part of it in another way. Right? So we have volunteers.
Interesting.
People who really, really, really believes in the things that we do and really wants to be part of it, but they are stuck with a bond.
They're stuck with a what?
A bond. Oh. Like a government bond.
Okay.
Right? And then okay, girl gotta serve her bond. So, but would you still like to stick around? Yeah, sure. For small stuff, yeah, sure. And we try and work things around like that. So I think that's what we offer, right? The flexibility, the really just creativity even as to how you would like to be involved, how you can be involved. And I think that's the fun part about the things that comes around at Will and Well. Yeah.
At what point of the journey of building the business did you realize that, I really need to get someone to help?
Yeah, no. Wow. I think I've always been on the lookout for help.
Okay.
I've just always been on the lookout.
Yeah.
And one came along. We have this volunteer, Dave. Dave is, oh my goodness, he's the first person who came on the journey with me. So Dave has set the tone for Will and Well.
Wow. What does that mean?
So whatever you see on the website, the copies and all that, most of it were set by him. Yeah.
Was it something he came up with, or was it something that through multiple conversations with you and he did that? Yeah,
it was the latter.
Okay.
So it was through understanding the heartbeat of Will and Well. And my own one actually, and he got it straight up. He's something else as well because he thinks his mind is in another world.
That's a good thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't belong to us.
And that's a good thing.
And it's a good thing. Okay. It's so good.
Okay.
Because it's quite funny. So like how, and then after Dave, there was other people that came along and that basically set up Will and Well that really led us to where we are. Honestly, I must say, if it wasn't for my team, I don't know how much more painful the journey would have been for me. And thank God for them. I can talk to you over here about all these things, right? Yeah, and that's kind of how it all started with Dave, you know, attending to the tone and the brand. Then there was Sui that came in to make sure that if I want to do a business online, I need to set up cookies and stuff like this, which I never knew. And I wouldn't be able to help myself.
Yep.
And then came Cheryl. Cheryl is a full-timer at Will & Well. She first joined while she was still in school. And back then, she was volunteering as well. I couldn't afford any of them. But we knew that, so we have been in conversation and I knew that she would very much like to work at Will & Well when she graduates. And so that was the goal. The goal was to be able to bring in money to hire her full time. Yep. That was the only goal back then.
I'm glad you did it. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank God. Thank God we made it happen. And then slowly we started people writing in about internships. And then we started taking them and we started being able to pay according to, you know, what's out there. Yeah. And yeah, I guess we're still in the process of that. Hopefully by next year I will be able to bring in some of these interns who have made mention that they would potentially like to join us full time when they graduate. So I guess fingers crossed. Yeah.
What has running the company taught you about yourself? It's been an incredible journey, I think. 5, 6, 7 years?
Honestly, the business only started almost 4 years ago. But the research, the whole journey started, maybe 7 years, 8 years ago. Yeah, 7 years ago. And firstly, when I was 18, I had decided that I was never going to do business.
Why?
Yeah, because I thought that it would require too much of an integrity of a person to do a good business.
That you will compromise your integrity to do good business?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like to run a business that is good, it would require this level of integrity. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And I just didn't think that I had it in me. Back at 18 years old, and I was just like, you know what? Don't need to think so much about it. You know, no integrity, that doesn't matter. All right, we're not gonna do business. We're gonna do something else. All right, okay, let's move on. Okay. But who knew that when
what changed?
I guess when I was on that journey of even first understanding the needs of the users, that was when I really had to face with being honest with myself if the design that I put out actually meets needs or not. So that's when I started learning the importance of integrity even as a designer.
Integrity as a designer? Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because if you say that this piece of product is going to help this person, you got to be dang sure that it does, right? If not, your statement is flawed. Your design is flawed. Right. And I mean, honestly, till today, I don't think that my solution may serve everyone's needs. But if it does, for the certain people who meets, we do have products that do not very, 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 very basic level, right? Let's say if our size is unto L, If you are bigger than that, if you cannot fit, then technically it doesn't fit.
Yep.
Right. So we don't take it upon ourselves that way. We're not like too hard on ourselves. But if fundamentally you say that this design serves this need, then it should lah. Right. And so that's when I was, I guess that's where I started learning and facing myself honestly and with my work, right? And I think, I guess after a bit of, having to rough that out with myself, I realized that that is a very important value in the business. Yeah. And in the design front and the business front. Yeah. The integrity is very important, because if we say we represent these people, you better do so. Yeah. If not, it's gonna bite you somewhere. For one.
Yep.
And yeah, I think that has to be the lamppost. So that's something that I had learned. I'm still learning, honestly. I think it's always, you just always have to be in check. Yeah. I also learned that, you don't have to do it yourself. You can ask for help. I'm still learning that. It's quite funny. So with my team, I would think that I would be able to do something, and then they were like, okay, but how are you going to do this? I'm like, it will happen. Like, I can do it. Like, then they were like, just ask for help if you need. All right, we'll be here.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, I can ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah.
I clearly forgotten that I have help. So sometimes you kind of want to like take it upon yourself because you feel like responsible for it. But, other people have made themselves available as well. So I think it's important to acknowledge that they are able to do the task very well as well.
Yep.
And to make your life easier, and to accept that is a learning journey. To always be reminded of that is also a learning journey. Yeah.
I'm curious to know, how do your roles change? How do your roles in the business change when you got more people to help, more volunteers and interns to help? How do your role change? Because you mentioned of your love for doing the basics of which is the sewing, the pattern making. So do you still get to do that, or have you been thrust into like a different role these days? Yeah.
So, I mean, I love doing that, but I've grown to love a lot to do a lot. Yeah, grown to love to do a lot other things, right? So, as we went on, and I got a tailor to help and to support on that end, I end up not having to do very much of that. But at times when, things still require immediate attention, and if my tailor can't do it, I'll do it.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so thank God the skills come in handy.
Even though you haven't touched them for a bit? Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I like it so much that I can, it's almost like intuitive. It's probably programmed already in my head too.
So it's like riding a bike?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Maybe easier.
Oh, interesting.
Because sometimes, on the bike, like I feel like I fractured the tire of my bike, which I need to like attend to soon. But
balance is difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much about balance, but it's how do you do it? How do you ride a bike properly?
I don't think it's a proper way to do it. You just go and you hope that you don't fall down, you don't crash, there's no potholes.
Yeah, so that's like survival 101, right? Yeah. But like as you progress, how do you ride a bike such that you do not spoil the tires? So I've just been thinking about how I can ride more smoothly.
Better seats. Bigger tires.
Yeah, probably bigger tires, right? Yeah. But like I have problems with like even like when I approach a curb.
Yep.
I do like dash at it, right?
Do you try to go up the curb?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
And sometimes it's just such a abrupt like motion that it might be a bit too rough for the front tires.
I think it's gonna happen nonetheless. I think there is no getting around the grinding of the tires when you're when you're riding it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just thinking like, maybe I could like help with the impact a little bit more.
You have to brace for impact, that's for sure.
Like, is there a way to lift the bike a little bit?
I think you might tip like that.
Yeah, okay. So I might be overthinking this with regards to the bicycle.
Okay. But functionally, going back to the question, if there is a need for it, you can still stand in, let's say, for the sewing part.
Yeah, I do. And then answering the rest of the question, it's also how, so thank God, recently I've met this designer who is part of our team now. Having someone to attend to the design aspect is very helpful because then it allows me to look at the business, to attend to the overall strategy, right? Really just looking at the business now. And I think I'm hoping that is what we will transition into. Yeah, I've grown to love a lot of other things.
Like, what do you mean by that?
So I hold a full-time job as well.
What? Okay. Outside of Will and Well.
Yeah, outside of Will and Well.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay.
And so after starting Will and Well, I sort of knew that I was going to do my master's. And then I just completed my master's sometime in July. That was my final paper. It was on social innovation.
Social innovation. Could you give a brief explanation of what that is to people who might not know what that is?
Yeah. So it's really, how we can look at social issues and create and innovate solutions to address all of this.
Okay.
Right. It's very applicable across different industries. Very applicable across different sizes. Whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's a public sector or a private sector, anything, or a social enterprise, anything. And what are some ways that you can navigate around all the social problems, right? And of course, going on that course just got me like exposed to so many other things in the world. It gets me so excited. And yeah, I have then decided that after my master's, I wanted to explore more. Yeah.
Is it in a particular space, or what do you mean by exploration?
So it's very interesting. So where I am now is in the tech space.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's in the tech space. I'm learning about that space. I have no foundation in that space. I'm in fact quite a tech noob. Okay.
Okay.
But what I do is so this at this new place or this full-time job, I'm attending to a sustainability project.
Oh
yeah, so it's really looking at how we can match sustainability startups with corporates that potentially could help them to scale or take them to a different height. Giving them that exposure. So that's a project I'm running. And it's interesting. Yeah, because it's a different space. But it's also important. I don't know how to put this. Just because sustainability is we're kind of in a place where we are threatened very much now by the rate of things that has accelerated, right? From industrialization to how capitalism has brought us. But I mean, I'm not going to even talk about that because like we're going to get into trouble talking about that. This one end, we will have a few more episodes. But I mean, having said that, it's not all bad, right? It's just knowing that, by a certain year, Singapore might flood. That's it.
Yeah, there have been really scary predictions.
Yeah, less than 100 years from now, we're gonna be flooded in the west and the east side. And by the way, in Singapore, the highest point is Bukit Timah. So if you wanna, if nothing progress and if things and the global warming side has progressed faster.
So the safe point is Bukit Timah.
Yes.
Good to know. It's a little bit far west, but I think we have 100 years to get there. So it's cool.
Yes. Yeah, it's a rather pressing issue. But like you said also, how inclusivity has been such a buzzword and has been so abused in some sense as well. Sustainability is also a topic, right? And
like even for the word sustainability, there's so many facets to it.
Exactly.
And when let's say a brand or corporation uses it, it might have a different meaning compared to when an activist or an individual would say something about it. And sometimes when you look at the commercialization of such societal issues, it runs a bit of conflict.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And how is it then? Yeah, how can organizations or how can we be honest with ourselves as to what we would like to do and what we can do at this point? I mean, if you say this is as much as I can do, nobody's gonna trash you, you know, because it's a progress, right? As long as you mean well and you're doing your best, and that's as it is. But don't misuse it. Don't greenwash things, because that's just the most. Yeah, it's appalling.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Going back to what you shared about the full-time job, were you surprised to see so much innovation going on in Singapore that might not be known to the public?
Yeah.
That there are actually people working with science and technology and everything else to innovate and to solve the problem of sustainability?
Honestly, I don't think I've gotten to that point yet.
Okay.
I haven't gotten to the point where I feel that there has been a lot more. Yeah, but I think what I've gotten to is that, you know, maybe there could be a different. Yeah, I've been thinking about processes, right? How I mean, doing well for a while now, and one thing that we pride ourselves for is the way we approach our processes, in our design work, and that is something we think that if more people could also apply a very similar approach, then designs could look rather different. And I think that's something that what I'm thinking on the other hand, on the sustainability side is really, do people actually mean what they say to do? Like what we said, right? About how people use these buzzwords for marketing's sake, right? Yeah, and I think I think what I'm making sense for myself at this point is how much of that is okay and how much of it is not okay. When is it that you cross the line? Because corporates can say that, you know, I represent this, but you won't know until you go through the entire process, and then their different faces start showing. Then you would know if they do mean or they do not mean.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's only in these details that you see the reality of things. And I guess I'm still in the process.
Is it also a little bit about accountability as well? Because in the age that we're in with social media and everything, I mean, conversation can happen in an instant with brands and everything. And I've seen many examples where if a brand were to say they want to do something, but on the flip side, they are still doing certain practices that might run counterintuitive to what they say. And they're actively being called out on social media to be accountable. I think the word is accountability because before the internet, before social media, before this era of fast communication and stuff like that, I think holding an invisible board of directors of a company accountable is nigh impossible. But right now, because of the image that brands and corporations and entities have to portray, you can hold them to the fire a little bit. And not just brands and corporations, but even like people or government. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is very interesting because I mean we could potentially go down a different route with this, you know, Kevin.
Where we hit it.
Yeah, where we hit. I have no clue by now.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, right? I think I do agree. That's after all about accountability, right? And I think the more fundamental or something more bite-sized and more apparent is that, you know, back again to integrity. How can you check yourself, right? How can you be honest with yourself? And I think that would be a first point of accountability to yourself as a person, right? And then of course it trickles down to the people who you lead, who you represent. And yeah, I totally agree.
Because it's interesting in consideration of these problems, let's say sustainability, climate change, these are macro problems that no one individual themselves could solve.
Yeah.
And because these are group problems, and sometimes as an individual in a group, the responsibility of the individual kind of dissipates.
Yeah.
And you can absolve yourself of the responsibility and say, I'm not contributing, I don't drive and stuff like that, but I use plastics and stuff like that. But point to person B, they are the ones doing it, because I think that is the group mindset, because the individual kind of just lose themselves in the group. And yeah, because it is such a big problem.
It is.
It's not even a Singapore or like a Southeast Asia. It's like a global issue.
It is.
Yeah. And how does an individual even find the will to take a step forward to even find solutions to it? I think that is really that's quite commendable to people actually actively pursuing solutions to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I just gotta be really honest, man. I've just been thinking about how I should manage my food waste.
Okay.
Right.
It's like leftovers and stuff like that.
Yeah. How do you manage them? Right. What's the best way to go about doing that also?
Was that how the carrot laksa came about?
To some extent.
Okay.
I mean, the carrot laksa is probably just me being really easy with like the food that I eat, right? And like, you know, when you have nothing else, all right. Yeah. But it's also thinking about like let's say your banana peels. How can you dispose it in a more in a better manner, right? And I've been trying to see how I can make my own compost. Yeah.
Okay.
For my cute plant.
Okay. Yeah.
So that is also something I've been thinking about, you know. And so another thought is then I only have one plant.
Okay.
But I have so much food waste. What am I gonna do with my excessive compost? Right? Compost. What am I gonna do with it? I have no clue yet. And that's just something I've been thinking about. But yeah, I think these are small ways that we can keep ourselves accountable to if we say we care about certain stuff, I guess. Yeah, and I guess it's always managing that tension with yourself also. I think that's something we at some times have to be gracious to ourselves, be kind to ourselves, and know that, you know, you do mean well. But as long as you keep yourself in check, that, you know, you're not doing certain things because you are lazy, or you know, then I think you're progressing after all.
I think the idea of being kind to yourself in whatever form or fashion is not talked about.
Yeah, really? I
think not just in the areas of accountability yourself, when let's say about sustainability and stuff like that, but I don't think it's a very common practice to be kind to yourself. I mean, people work at breakneck speeds to get something, and when they don't achieve it, and you get a whole host of bad perceptions and negative feelings, be it internally or externally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that I'm curious to know your thoughts on this. Do you feel like Singapore is taking steps in the right direction to address these perhaps larger societal issues that we might be facing?
Well, that's that's a really big question. Just because, I think Singapore tries.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we try. But after all, we also have our limitations, just because we are, fundamentally, geographically, very small. Tiny. And how we started, right? And how we are right now. What we realize about ourselves now that we are caught in an endemic and realizing, actually, we are rather dependent on a lot of other stuff. Unfortunately, right? We thought we were invincible when the news and the media portrayed us as the first whatever. But you only realize when all this is are taken apart in some ways or another. And I think because we are trying, it's still worth the fight. Yeah, it's still worth the fight. I can't think of, a perfect way to do things, right? And I think as long as, like we said again, as long as our leaders are accountable, our systems are transparent in some sense. See, the thing about transparency also is sometimes you can't show everything because you need to protect yourself as well.
It's like national security.
Yeah, national security and stuff like that, right? And it's hard to make a comment about it as a layman.
Yep, because hopefully there are things that not every person should know.
Yeah.
Only a select group. But I think that therein lies the paradox.
Yeah, it is.
Or like the paradox of modern society, because if everybody knows something, then it could prove to be a national risk. And if it's a national risk, then the end point of that particular train of thought could be even worse off than what you have now. But if it's closed off, then people start to question why things are moving this way. Yeah.
So it's and I think this is really there's something that I always like to think about is the unintended consequences of things, right?
Or the well-meaning actions.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think this is something that, as long as we think about it, as long as we can be accountable to that, then all right, we just try our best, really. We do our best. And I think really, Singapore, we do try. We can try better, but yeah, I guess it's not the effort of only the government, I must say. I think as I'm saying this, I think you and I are accountable to it too. And anyone else who's listening to this, we are all accountable to the future that we say we want to see.
A couple more questions before we end the recording. I'm curious to know what went into the thought process for the name Will and Well.
It's quite funny.
Did you just like the words?
No.
Okay.
The three words you like best, Will and Well.
I wouldn't even call "and" a word. So Will, Well. I mean, it's kind of catchy.
It is. So this really is a story because when I was doing my final year project, I was doing it with two other friends. I had roped two other friends to do it with me because I know that there's no way I can do all of it myself to make a good case in point. That was what I wanted to do for my final year project. And these two friends came along and they really did a good job to make to make the final year project a bam.
Yeah.
Like a bang. And then so my good friend Caroline, who was doing the branding side of things, she thought about Will and Well when she was in the toilet.
Oh, like where most good ideas come from. Okay. I get that. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a toilet idea.
Yep.
And then she got out of the toilet. She brought it out. She brought it up to us, and she said, "Hey, I thought about this ideas." And we're like, "Oh no, that sounds really nice, but what does it mean?" No idea. Toilet idea. All right. So we put it to the teacher nonetheless because we thought, there's a ring to it.
Yep, there is a ring to it.
And then teacher liked it. Teacher didn't care much for what it really meant behind that. And okay, never mind. We finished our final year project. And then that was when I have to take the brand on as a business when it really hit. Like, there's no way Kevin asked me and I end the story by saying it's toilet idea, full stop.
Why not?
Right? So that was something that I refused to live with.
Okay.
And so I started thinking about, maybe I should change it to another name or something else, right? But I was really pondering about it along with all the other business things that I had no clue about. Then that was kind of when things got really, things were tough. Like you said, when I was doing it myself, when you do it yourself and all that. I mean, I used to go to the library to pick up accounting books for accounting noobs.
Those are accounting tomes, not books. Yeah. Those are not books. A book is meant to be read. That is meant to be done something with. Yeah.
To decompose.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
But yeah, and then I would read business laws and fall asleep and try to open my eyes again to read it somewhere. And that was really when I actually questioned myself of whether I should do this even. Should I really even do
the
try
business?
And set a business? Yeah. And it was when the going got tough that so I'm a Christian and I hold close to my relationship with God. And that was when I sort of just felt a sense of encouragement that sounded like this, right? Elisa, if you have the will to do this for me, then I will make it well for you.
Wow.
And that made complete sense. Yeah. For my customers. Because when I got that sense of comfort, it instantly made sense for me about what will and well will mean. That if our customers have the will to live a good life, then we'll be here to make it well for them. Yeah. So that was clear for me that, okay, I will do it. I will do it. And this is what it will mean for our customers as well.
And that seems to have been a guiding principle for the company since.
Yeah.
Has there been instances where you or your team might have a particular idea, but because it deviates from this core idea, you guys might have to give it up and still question yourselves as to why are we doing this? What is the reasoning for? Has there been instances like that?
No, we do that all the time. My goodness.
Okay.
So even until today, as we are growing the company, as we are introducing new elements to things structurally, it's amazing that even my intern would ask, why are we doing this? Right? And of course, then I would explain with the way I had thought about it. And that's why we do agree to do certain things. And they get it. And I guess that has, it's something that we always keep in check with. Yeah, even if it means to put out a message about certain thing or represent something, we will ask ourselves, does this really serve the purpose that we say we're out to serve, right? If not, then no,
scrap it.
Yeah, scrap. Yeah, and I think honestly, thankfully for this, it makes it so much easier to make decisions. I guess that's what principles and values do for us, right?
Yep. There is a certain integrity there.
thankfully.
So I think one of the last couple of questions I have is, how has your idea of fashion changed? Because you initially mentioned that you were interested in the basics of fashion, and you were looking at blogs and looking at all these pictures and stuff like that. But after going through the whole process and knowing that the business still has a really bright future, how has your idea of fashion changed?
No, very, very interesting. I really like that question just because very recently on it, then I got to start thinking about. So when I had started, like I told you and I expressed that how I felt that the social space has been so welcoming. And honestly, the design space was not the first space that supported the journey, and it was disappointing when I had started off. And so I don't hold the fashion industry very close to my heart, just because I feel like a lot of it I don't relate with. A lot of it I can't get a way around it as well. But recently I started thinking about it's very prominent about the state of the craft that we're headed towards, in the sense that your tailors are no longer getting younger. Unfortunately.
And no one's picking up the craft.
Nobody's picking up the craft. Nobody wants to sew. Nobody wants to do pattern drafting.
Yep.
Nobody's paying for that.
My dad is actually a tailor, and he laments to me all the time.
Damn, what? You totally understand. Oh my God.
Yeah, at least from my perspective.
Yeah.
To go off on a little bit of tangent, from my perspective, there seems to be a gap.
Yes.
Like between the people of his generation, which are very well proficient in tailoring and all those other things, but there is a gap from my generation, the generation above me and maybe below me. No one's taking it up because it is not a very excitable craft. You're always behind the scenes. Unless you have a shop, you're always behind the scenes. You're always getting commission, and there's also the problem of outsourcing. Yeah.
No, 100%. And that's that's so painful. It's so scary to think of even running a fashion business.
In Singapore, no less.
In Singapore, yes. You can't imagine in say 25 years down the road, you don't know whether there's anybody going to make clothes for you,
Yeah.
And then so that's like a pain point, right? Like a challenge that I know that we will come to at some point. But then recently I started thinking about, if we presented the craft in a different way, if the craft could be challenged from the way patterns and clothing were made from industrialization time, could it make the craft more exciting? Because now we're talking about innovation, right? If innovation can happen with the craft, so I think that the way we look at patterns at Well is rather unconventional. So that's why also back to one of the questions about, is it difficult to look for people? Yes, it's so hard to even convince my tailors or tailors of the way we approach our patterns.
Could you explain that?
Yeah, so we would tell them that, this area needs to have this area, like the butt area, you cannot draw a pattern this way. You got to draw it with a different contour, and you really have to create a dot at the back of your butt. Yep. And they'd be like, what? Like, no, like we have made clothes for 30 years and nobody makes pants like this. So no. Okay, so that was my initial challenge, really. Like every time I look for a tailor, I always either do with two kinds. One kind, which is the more common one, is the one that says, no, this is not possible. But thank God also for the other ones who say, oh, this is different, but let's try it.
Oh.
Yeah. So thank God for this tailors that we actually get to do what we do. Yeah. And then I never quite saw that, it has just been a thing we had to deal with, and I thought no one else needs to deal with this. But I started thinking that, if the craft had this kind of elements, if the craft was being pushed in this direction, it could make the craft really interesting, because until today, I still pattern draft myself. I still pattern draft my clients' clothes. And I like it. It's a lot of fun. And when I have to teach my interns about it, it's like opening their eyes to a different way of doing things.
Yep.
And the possibilities of the craft from then on could be the future, could at least see some light. You know?
Yep.
And then how can we bring this education to schools? How can we bring this message to your future potential fashion designers and craftsmen, actually? And maybe if some of this changes, the industry, the way businesses are being run could potentially be rather different as well. Yeah. And then, I have it in my head, right? But like, how far must I bring this to? How long must I do this before it becomes a reality, and before it just dies out altogether?
What do you think is hindering us from perhaps taking a step towards that direction?
I think, oh my gosh, this is going to sound a little offensive, but I do not want to offend anyone here. But I think that the teachers in schools are too comfortable. Yeah. People are comfortable. People are too comfortable doing the things that they have been taught to do. They don't think beyond what they were taught. And because of that, and it's not just teachers, really. Sometimes, even more often than not, leaders of the industries, they talk a lot about, how the future should have been like this or that. They talk about the past a bit too often.
I agree.
And not the future.
Yep.
Because and they can't talk about the future because they are so caught up in the past and the present, they can barely imagine what the future could look like. And because of that, it serves as a hindrance to the future generation and what could potentially be the future, because these are the people who are holding the seats. I do have a problem with that. I have a big fat problem with that.
I always found the idea of nostalgia and looking to the past to be a bit insidious, because if you were to really consider the future is never going to look anything like the past, and the past only serves to perhaps inform and to educate a little bit, but a lot of the judgment and even the plans you make for the future should be forward thinking, and you shouldn't be looking back to make those decisions. Yeah.
Quite exactly. And when we talk about forward thinking, then what is it? What does that really look like?
Or what does it even mean?
Yeah,
because people would have different conceptions of what the future will look like. And because people care for different things. And unless you have a really wide group of diverse individuals with different minds and different ways of thinking and different problems and challenges they face, unless you get them all in a group and you talk it out, it's never gonna it's never gonna fit this idea of inclusivity and stuff, like, because there was this video that I watched some time back. It basically says that the world you see and the world that you interact with is not meant for you, because it is for the average individual. And the average individual, you will never fit the average individual, because whether be it you're with disabilities or you're able-bodied or anything, because it is always of a very nebulous criteria. So I think that the simplest way I can think of, in a way, it's like how a lot of things are catered towards right-handers. But there are people with more accustomed to using their left hand, but that is just overlooked. So that was a fantastic video, and it made me think that that is true, because the way systems are made up is to cater to quote unquote the average and the majority, for the sake of efficiency and stuff like that. But I believe we are in this point in time where we are thinking about the other group, the entire picture, and to bring everybody up to a level that is comfortable for everybody. It's not just to cater to the majority of people.
Yeah, quite right. And I think you can think that, William Law is trying to do that as well, in some sense.
I'm curious to know though, why is this idea of serving this community of people, why is it important to you?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily only persons with disabilities, in all honesty, right? I think it's anyone out there. I mean, I think a lot of what may seem to be the area that we're serving right now is largely from the way we started, right? But at the back of my mind, or somewhere in my mind, I'm thinking about famine issues in Africa. And the problem statements that they have are very interesting. So I've heard from a friend who was just driving past the street in Africa and into that village, and he's saying that there are a lot so these are farmers. They have a lot of food and crops that they have harvested, but because there's no market for it, they end up burning their food.
Interesting.
Yeah, and when they start burning their food, then you're gonna have air pollution issues. You're gonna have land waste issues and all that.
Scarcity as well.
It's all sorts of other problems that they face with, and these things bother me as well, right? It's just that at this point I do not have a way around it. So yeah, hopefully sometime or someone else could attend to that with the resource, then yeah, I think I would very much hope to see a solution to that, or their needs being met in some ways or another. So yeah, I guess Wilma has been positioned in a way where we had started off that way. But even having said that about Will and Well, honestly, we have also been representing groups that we think are that we have the capacity to support as well. So one of it is the COVID the CMSC group, which is an organization that supports the migrant workers in Singapore. Yep. So they actually, we knew that they had a campaign going on. They were trying to fund $800,000 or maybe even $1 million. God knows, I forgot now. But they were really trying to get a lot of money to support this group of people back in the days when we were in lockdown, under the lockdown. And we thought, yeah, it's at the time that we thought we were going to pull out Give Me a Hand. Because, geez, it gotta be the best time to bring these cards out, because people are stuck with their loved ones now. Yep. And when would be a better time to get people to, or when would we face with such pressing needs to then talk about these things, especially now that you're stuck with one another. And then to think that, hey, our migrant friends on the other hand are feeling really upset because they cannot be with their family.
Exactly.
What irony, isn't it? And so we thought, okay, you know what? Our cards might not be ready yet. We have the structure of the game already. Let's put a bit of it up, and then, do a pay as you wish campaign, and then donate the entire sum to support the CSMC group. And we did very much that. And that was what we could represent back then, right? And then recently they asked for masks, reusable masks for their for the migrant workers as well. And so we decided, okay, we're going to start a campaign asking, anyone who would like to sponsor, they can purchase it. We will make it and produce it for them in support of the needs that there are. And then when the Afghan situation broke out, there was also a time that I was really trying to think about how we can be a part of, how can we support this in a meaningful way, not just putting another post or leveraging
statements or
making statements.
That.
That's it, right? So what we did was, so this is rather linked to my my network from my social innovation course. I have this really good friend who was really on the front supporting the women of Afghan back then. And she, on the other hand, is trying to get these people to escape the country. So she was on the front doing that. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know how I can do that in Singapore, but how can I help? Right? And so we did a talk so she helped this Afghan woman to escape, and then this Afghan woman actually did the talk for people. So what we could do to push the education and to give a proper impression of what really is going on, what we could do was to blast it on our own platform and say, hey, we have this talk going on, come and learn about it. And then we added credible links that people could donate directly to. So I think we try and represent groups that needs a voice, needs a platform. And honestly, we do not have the biggest platform. We do not even have a big platform even to say it, right? We're small. But even with the small that we have, it's still a space.
We are being authentic to what you guys say and stand for.
And we put it out there nonetheless, and we try our best in the best ways that we can afford, right? I think that sort of answers your...
Definitely. The idea of sponsorships is also common in, I think, one of the campaigns that y'all run, right?
Yes.
Which is, I think, is it the Be the Difference campaign?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. Oh my gosh, Be the Difference makes me so excited all the time. Just because it's a hack to the problem that we have.
What is the problem?
The problem is cost. And your father would know this very well. You will also know this very well, right? Cost is always a problem when it comes to customization, when it comes to tailoring, right? And the people who normally can afford this belongs to a different
income group, social group,
very different groups. But the needs do not only limit to people in that social group, unfortunately. And so we want to meet needs. And how can we meet needs even though we have this resource constraint, right? Our seamstress needs to be paid as well, fairly. And so we thought, okay, if we could match well-wishers, who are people who would like to support our clients who cannot afford our products and services, and if people could also reach out to their own network of people who they know might have these needs, they can nominate, right? So there's this structure that goes around Be the Difference, and that's kind of how we support the needs as we always as we try our best to attend to. Yeah,
that was a brilliant campaign, really.
Yeah,
it's super brilliant.
It makes me it's really, that campaign really meets the needs. That's it, as it is. I
think my last question for the night is, what does success mean to you right now in 2021 going to 2022 after you having run the business and meeting all these people? What does it mean to you? Has it changed?
No, I always have to keep myself in check about that, right? I had thought about that properly before, And one thing that the conclusion is that for me, success would mean that if people are my KPIs.
Could you please explain that?
Yeah, so as long as I am able to meet the needs of people, to be there for people when they need me, when they do not actually have the kind of attention that they need. And I say need because sometimes people are not given the kind of emotional support. In fact, a lot of my clients with physical needs more often care for emotional needs more than their physical needs.
Do you mean to say that they have emotional needs to be cared for?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and to even be attended to emotionally, yeah, can sometimes be apparently more important than having their physical needs met.
And that is, I would imagine, a lot more difficult because you can't see it.
Oh, yeah.
And first of all, someone has to communicate the emotional need.
Yeah.
And if that is missing, I feel that we as humans, we are very bad with things we can't see.
Yeah, I mean, just because we just think
we rely on our eyes too much.
Yes, we do. My goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, to only be reminded that we do have other senses as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think, if a person's need is being met in one way or another, then I think I think that is success to me in some ways. I think people lives are very important. Lives matter a lot, and whatever that state of the quality of the life that the person may have, and if I can help to improve or bring some form of a solution to that, then I think I count that as success. I count it as worthwhile. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's almost like a service unto others. Yeah. That's really amazing. Before we end, is there anything you would like to ask me?
Very interesting. I wanted to ask about the vintage clothes around here.
Okay.
Just because I'm sitting in this space and I'm smelling this clothes that I recognize so well. Like the smell of vintage.
Yep.
Yeah. Is my past.
I don't know what that means.
I mean, just because I do have a huge stash of vintage hats and clothes, and I used to like I'm a scavenger in these spaces, and
So we are in the amazing Death Strat space. So that's the name of the shop. They have been selling vintage clothing, I think, for like 3.5 years. So I think there was a real boom of interest and demand, I think 3 to 4 years back.
Yeah.
Because of, I think, cultural reasons, people started picking up. It could be sustainability. I think the trend really came from the West. Yeah. And when people realized, hey, these clothes are actually quite cool. It has a story to them. There's a certain level of authenticity.
Yeah.
Like there's a whole lot of reasons as to why there is such a high valuation for these shirts.
Yeah.
And I think, interestingly enough, at least from what I've heard, for certain pop culture related memorabilia, the more wear and tear it has, the higher the value.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really, really interesting facets to this particular culture, and it's driven a lot by demands from I think people my and your age and even younger, because of what they see online, they see their favorite celebrities wearing like this shirt from the 90s, and they're like, oh, where do I get that?
Yeah.
They wear like a Marvel t-shirt from the 80s and the 90s. Oh, where do I get that? I think this really caters to that demand, which is interesting because it solves the idea of, oh, maybe I will buy something from Uniqlo, but I buy something that has really existed. So in a way, it kind of solves the problem of sustainability. Instead of people going to buy from a shop, they buy something secondhand or even third hand.
Right. Well, thanks for explaining that. But yeah, no, I want to claim that question again that you have. I actually have my Give Me a Hand deck here. And,
I see it.
And can you draw one card? And I would like to hear your answer to that.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Oh,
no worries about that.
Okay, I got it. So the question is, if you could make a rule for a day that everyone has to follow, what would it be?
Aha, yes.
I'm not prepared for this question. Let me think. Everyone has to follow.
Yeah.
Okay, assuming that I have a lot of faith in people following the rule.
Yeah.
The only answer I can give you the only answer I could give you right now is for people to actually take the time to understand themselves. Yeah. Partly because I believe a lot in the agency of the self, and I believe that is a very that is a need that people might not realize that they should tend to, and B, it's not as talked about, because living in Singapore, you are kind of shoehorned into a particular path, be it, I think back when I was back in school, it's more of the education, and you're shoehorned into, oh, you do this for 4 years, you do that for 6 years, you do that for 4 years, and you're like 35 and 40, and you have been pushed along this path. And I think that reality is very common for some people because of different expectations of the family, the external family, and I think it's important for an individual to realize who they are and what they stand for, and to also acknowledge that is an ever-changing process, and not be too fixed on that. The idea that anything is fixed in this world, it's a bit silly. Yeah. Because we in society, it builds up this certain sense of order, and to order that people can trust in, like the MRT, the stations, trains. We need that. But the idea that anything of the self, anything to do with humans or the self is inherently fixed, I think that's a bit silly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thanks for sharing that. No, I love that.
That's the answer I have saved back in my head. Yeah. But as I said, that is assuming that humans in general, even follow rules. I mean, we have a lot of rules, but it is to our benefit and dismay that we're able to think 50 different ways to go about this particular rule. It's really to our benefit and dismay, because that is how great innovations could happen, and the worst criminal acts could also happen.
Yeah.
So I think you got to take the good with the bad, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's this whole spectrum that it's called the human experience.
No, 100%. Yeah. Lovely.
So where can people find you? Where can people find Will and Well?
You can find Will and Well on www.willandwell.com.
Fantastic.
Yeah. On our Instagram, actually, a lot more happenings happen over there. Like the different things that we care for, we do share on those platforms as well. You get the latest news there. Facebook will be the second place, and then we are currently doing our artist residency at Orchard NLB. It's a beautiful space. We're very thankful for the opportunity. I love the library.
I can tell. I think I might have surmised that.
Yeah, and it's so nice that Will and Well can be there.
Yep. Okay, quick question, quick tangent actually. Do you think the idea of a library would diminish as people move a lot of the publication and there's a lot more focus of publicating to online.
No, this is very interesting because I actually spoke to the librarian about this, right? And what I realized is that the NLB actually holds such great weight on their shoulders because they have to follow with the ever-changing trends and technology and innovation. And they themselves as well are keeping up with that, right? And God knows how NLB might look like in the future, but at least for now, we are thankful that, we can actually even borrow books online.
Oh, definitely.
Right? And just like read ebooks and all that. So I think they are, I gotta say, I think they are doing a really good job in that. And still using their physical space to be very relevant. They are putting out, like, I think, if you have no idea where, like how people go to like Times, whatever, to look for what's the latest events and right. I think NLB actually has pretty good events curated, even physically, for their audiences. And yeah, it really got me thinking about how the library might seem like a quiet, and the role of a librarian might be something that is so unknown and and so quiet, right?
In more ways than one.
Yeah, in more ways than one. And yet they are quietly moving rather aggressively with the speed of the society. And that itself is just something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. But back to that. We are there till the end of the year, which is coming to an end soon.
Yeah.
And then God knows where we will be moving to. Yeah.
I hope the answer will be clear to you soon.
Yes. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Thank you, Elisa. Thank you for your time and the fantastic conversation.
Likewise, Kevin. Appreciate you.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the episode and feel inspired. If you enjoyed what you heard thus far, do give us a follow on Instagram. And don't forget to share and subscribe. Stay tuned for the next episode.